Welcome back inside once again to Bonfire Sports. Getting set to have a conversation with Blue Bombers general manager Kyle Walters. If you missed it a little bit earlier, also have a conversation with head coach Mike O'Shea. So be sure to check that out here on the YouTube page, or if you're listening on podcast, be sure to download those as well. As always, Bonfire Sports brought to you by Shannon's Irish Pub. You got to check them out. Iconic spot in downtown Winnipeg, underneath the streets. If you've never been, go see them. 175 Carlton Street. Exceptional food, ice cold beer on tap, 21 different choices, all of your local craft breweries available as well. They got live music certain nights, karaoke. You can find information on all of that on ShannonsIrishPub.ca. But most importantly, Jets game days and Blue Bombers game days, they are open with food and drink specials. Be sure to check them out, 175 Carlton Street, and tell them Bonfire Sports sent you. Really happy to bring in the general manager of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Kyle Walters, to Bonfire Sports. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate the time. How are things out in Kananaskis right now?
Well, I just got in this morning, landed, and then drove out here, and then just started the media. So it was a nice drive. Weather's fine, but as I said, it's just seeing the hotel. And as soon as this ends, we'll head to meetings and all night and all day tomorrow, and then back to Winnipeg. So I'll get to see the hotel, I anticipate, not much else.
Well, I hope your room has a nice view. Kananaskis country, absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it was a really nice drive in.
Yeah. So look, I wish I was there with you, but this is a busy time for general managers, head coaches, personnel people, scouts, and the Canadian Football League as a whole. Some might even argue, Kyle, that a general manager's off season is just as busy, if not more busy, than during the season. Is that true?
Yeah, certainly more of the legwork. In the season, you're worried about, running the roster and the cap and the injuries and sort of the day-to-day. But yeah, the real heavy lifting starts, when you get into free agency, and now all of the draft work for the, the Canadian draft, the global draft gets rolling. So it's quite intense between now and the end of March, when the combine will ends, and you'll take April and regroup for the draft and training camp. But yeah, it's very busy. The off season tends to be busier than the in season work.
Let me throw one to you from my hip, because it just kind of occurred to me. But the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have, I wouldn't even say it's arguable that your global player is the best global player in the Canadian Football League. And that is, of course, defensive end, linebacker, hybrid, special teamer extraordinaire, Teodric Hansen from Germany, playing pro in Poland, doing a lot of great stuff off the field as well. Do you as a general manager get calls from individuals across the globe saying, hey, how did you find this guy? What did he do? What's the secret to success for somebody that, is overseas? That is either developing athletes or is an athlete trying to break into pro football?
Yeah, you know what? A lot of the players that have over in Europe that are interested have send emails and reach out, and the CFL head office does a good job. Like, they're the ones that track all the globals, and will go to the federations around the world and try to find these guys. So it's and then bringing them over to Canada. So if you're a good athlete and maybe a little inexperienced at football, playing overseas, you're going to get an opportunity to run around in front of the CFL people at combines and run around at your local combine in Europe or Asia somewhere in front of some CFL people. So, the CFL is doing a good job of really trying to identify the Teodric Hansens of the world and give them an opportunity to play in the CFL.
Yeah, you guys have done an exceptional job, not just identifying talent globally, but also developing them here in Winnipeg. Just a handful of guys you guys have done a very good job with. Speaking of international football moves, just happening today here on January 10th, a team recently eliminated from playoff contention in the National Football League, the Green Bay Packers. They've signed away one of your top young Canadians, a player you drafted in 2022, Tyrell Ford, a defensive back. Tell us about the process of athletes in Canada, in Canadian football, whether they're American or Canadian or a global player, under contract or not. How does it all work?
Well, you saw the same thing with D. Alford last year. So D. Alford was under contract for another year. Tyrell's under contract for another year. There's an agreement between the CFL and the NFL. So the NFL can send a form to me, and any NFL team can send the form requesting to meet with Tyrell Ford or any CFL player under contract. Doesn't matter whether you got a 10-year contract, expiring contract, or anything in between. Come January, they can send these workout request forms. So Tyrell had a bunch of interest from NFL teams to go work out and meet with him. And generally, once the numbers start creeping up to 6, 7, 8 teams that are interested in meeting with him, he's probably going to get a contract offer. So that's the next part of the agreement. So between, again, the CFL and the NFL, once an NFL team decides they want to sign a player that they've worked out, it's the second form, and now Tyrell goes. As I said, no different than D. Alford, who was under contract, that there was an agreement between the CFL and the NFL that these players, regardless of contract status, have the opportunity to go sign an NFL contract despite being under a CFL contract for multiple years. It's just the way it is. So Tyrell's an interesting one because I spoke to the guys in Green Bay, and Tyrell didn't play a ton of defense for us this year, and they spent zero time watching film. The Green Bay Packers didn't look at what Tyrell Ford did on the field. What they do is they go back and look at all the pro day numbers of all the players that haven't had an opportunity yet, and they're looking for guys that are young and are in the upper percentile of testing, which Tyrell was. Tyrell he was an unknown from the University of Waterloo, from NFL circles, shows up at the Buffalo Pro Day and kills it. Like absolutely tests like an NFL caliber defensive back. He didn't get an opportunity last year to stick. So all the teams kind of circled back and said, all right, well, he's got a year of pro football under his belt. He's a remarkable athlete. There's zero risk for an NFL team to sign Tyrell Ford because, as I said, he's got the measurables of an NFL player, and now he's got a year of pro football experience. So that's the way it went down. And a little surprising, I guess, after the year when you look at it from a Winnipeg fan of, well, he's a developmental kid that didn't play a ton of snaps for us. But when you look at it from an NFL standpoint, who just looks at the name Tyrell Ford on a piece of paper with those ridiculous testing numbers, then it starts to make a little more sense.
So for full clarity, because my social media started lighting up when Tyrell Ford signed with the Green Bay Packers on Tuesday afternoon, fans saying, why would the Blue Bombers release him? They're not going to have his rights when he comes back to Canada, if he comes back to Canada. That's not the case. He is still Winnipeg Blue Bombers property, if you will, if the NFL doesn't shake out.
Yeah, for the duration of his contract, right?
So you guys have had a handful of players go to the NFL over the last number of years. Defensive end Jonathan Kongbo, outstanding NCAA career, coming to Canada, winning a Grey Cup, a couple cups of coffee in the NFL now with the Denver Broncos. Of course, Drew Desjardins, outstanding offensive lineman. That's one guy from the NCAA, another guy from U Sports that have turned jobs into NFL contracts. Are you sensing that is a more common path now for Canadian athletes, CFL athletes, American, Canadian, or otherwise?
You know what? It's good. I think, the Jonathan Kongbo one is a little bit different. I mean, he was a star at the University of Tennessee, and if he didn't get hurt his senior year, I'm not sure we would have ever seen him in the CFL. I think he probably would have had an opportunity back then. So he came up and ended up signing. But for somebody like Drew from the University of Windsor and Tyrell from Waterloo, these are great stories for young Canadians that you can go to a U Sports school and have a good career, and if you're good enough, the NFL is going to find you. You play a couple years, a year in the CFL, and you can go. You just don't have to jump at some, a tier 2, I'll put it politely, NCAA school. U Sport football is fantastic football, and there's plenty of opportunity to make whatever jump you want to whatever level of football you need.
Right.
And these are good examples of it.
Yeah, well, I have a feeling you're a fan of Last Chance U, like I and many others are, where they talk about the Power Five conferences and then those mid majors and some of those programs that are kind of in between. Dalton Schoen comes to mind. It is a Power Five conference, but maybe a mid major school in the eyes of many. In case at Kansas State, what's been the latest on Dalton Schoen, who had no question an outstanding rookie season as an American in the Canadian Football League.
Right. So he's had some workouts, and here's the difference. So where I mentioned Tyrell Ford was an unknown. So the NFL had no idea who Tyrell Ford was until he showed up at that pro day, and they looked at the numbers and went, "Oh my goodness, who is this kid?" They know Dalton Schoen. To your point, he's played at Power Five conference. He's been in NFL training camps. Every NFL team has a report on him. Every NFL team knows what he's about. They've studied his college film. They know his pros, his weaknesses, why he didn't make it in the NFL, in their opinion. So now the interesting thing there is he comes up to the CFL and absolutely crushes it, all right, and puts up ridiculous stats and has a lot of success. So the NFL teams now, where it's quite simple to look for Tyrell Ford. You look at the name, you look at the testing numbers. We don't know anything about this guy. Of course, give him a shot. Dalton Schoen, now they're wondering, well, what did we miss about him? So they're going to have to go back and watch all the film and say, did we miss anything? Or is this just a guy that took advantage of the bigger field in the CFL, the waggle, all those things? Or what did we miss something? And the skills that he showed in the CFL, they translate to the NFL, and we're going to give him a shot. So whereas the NFL teams, I think, spent zero time watching Tyrell Ford film this year, I think the NFL teams are really pondering over the Dalton Schoen film to figure out, is there an NFL guy in there, or is it or not? That's right. The big difference, in my opinion.
Kyle, moving to your existing free agent list, and obviously there was a lot of work to do. I imagine a lot of it happened while the season was still happening, signing Zach Collaros to a 3-year contract extension, Willie Jefferson, Adam Bighill, and then you work down the list, Kyrie Wilson and Mike Benson and Winston Rose and Jake Thomas, and then most recently Stanley Bryant. Is it, like going through a list and checking them off, or do you have kind of your hands full, like you're juggling a lot of different conversations with agents and contracts and the people that kind of crunch the numbers and the legalese, if you will?
Yeah, we've got a lot of the heavy lifting's been done. As said, after last year where the Grey Cup, after the Grey Cup ended late in Hamilton and then right into free agency, and with all the every year there's 30 odd free agents, and it was just chaos. It was a miserable experience, and I said it's from a stress work standpoint, this can't possibly happen again. So made a concerted effort this year to start getting the ball rolling on the bye weeks and talking to agents and starting to get some deals in place that I knew come December would be easy to finish off, and I think you'll see with 3 or 4 more guys that appear as free agents on the list are going to get done shortly. So it's just about having a bunch of irons in the fire all the time, and then trying to make sure you meet the coach's wishes with these are the core guys, and the coaches certainly have their input, and everybody can see the guys that put up the stats or the all-stars, that those are the guys that the fans know. But there's the behind the scenes guys that the coaches feel for the locker room, and that this player maybe from a fan standpoint isn't a statistical guy, but from a coach's standpoint, well, he's every bit as important for what he does that nobody can see. So you get your list of guys, and between the stat guys and the all-stars and the leaders in the locker room, you try to piece together, and it's impossible to bring everybody back. And the next phase is, well, if we lose this player, what's the plan B? Is there a plan B in-house? Is there a scouting plan B? Is there a draft plan B? And yes, we don't want to move on from them, but certain guys are more easily replaced for the reasons I just said than others.
Yeah, I appreciate a thorough answer like that, Kyle. I'm curious if, some anxiety creeps in when you have a roster like yours that is incredibly talented, has proven to have good culture and good gel in the locker room and on the field, that is a winning pedigree, but also that is an aging one. As a general manager, tell me about, what goes into all of that when you start looking at the ages of some of the individuals and then, term on those contracts.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's of course it's omnipresent where you look at the ages and you're I guess to put it simply, we win 2 Grey Cups with this group, and we get to a third, and are also almost, we're very close to winning a third Grey Cup in a row. And it's I still think the winning core is there. I don't think, you don't want to use the term rebuild. I don't think we just need to move on from guys because of ages, particularly at certain positions where there's not a great replacement in place. So you combine those two thought processes at the moment and go, you know what? I think this core still got some time left and has a chance to be real productive and have earned the right to keep going as a group. So, to your point, yes, we discuss it, and you through your, which is why doubling back, you start losing your young Canadian draft picks to the NFL, and it's like, man, it is hard to get your Canadian talents, let alone really good ones that are young. And then when you start drafting these guys, they go to the NFL. That really, really hurts what you're talking about from a Canadian standpoint. That's for sure.
I know one thing I've been told many times by people around the league, the value of having a Canadian who can handle all 3 kicking duties. And then you touched on, maybe losing some of that Canadian talent like a Tyrell Ford and some others, Drew Desjardins in the last number of years to the NFL. What's the talent crop looking like in the 2023 CFL draft? And I've been asked many times, is there a kicker that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers may target?
No, not in this draft. I don't think it's a strong group of kickers at the moment. There'll be some punters in the global draft again, and we have the rights for a couple punters from last year that we'll circle back on. But we'll like all positions, we'll do our due diligence and try to explore all options. So, we'll see. I think there's some high-end talent in this draft. I think there's some NFL caliber guys, which always presents a bit of a problem. There's some real good Canadian players at NCAA schools that are going to get, whether it be undrafted status or I'm not sure. So that'll pose for an interesting challenge this year, because there will be a number of Canadians that are going to get NFL looks, and then we'll go from there. But as I said, it's like I've gone through the running backs, I've gone through the offensive line, so it's just a matter of starting to plug away at it, and should have all that a better idea. You and I can talk draft at the end of this month in a little bit more detail. I'll be better prepared from a totality standpoint, but it just seems like every year, you know what I mean? You start grinding along, and at the end of the year, you put together your draft list and hope for the best.
Well, I'll leave you on this one. And, you and I were kind of joking about it before, we started this, and that's the obvious question of your contract status and going into the final year of it with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I'll kind of just loft it up to you and let you answer that query that you've, I'm sure, had asked of you many, many times, not just at the CFL winter meetings in Kananaskis where you are right now, but over the last couple months.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it started, when Mike had his contract extension announced there, and certainly the question was, well, geez, it's been 10 years we've been doing this, and for the last 2 contract extensions, Wade would sit up there and he'd announce a contract extension for Mike and myself, and now this year, without a contract extension for myself to be announced, there was no need for me to be up there and have to have those awkward discussions on the day Mike's getting his extension. So, I was out of town, but whether I was in town or out of town, I don't think I wouldn't have put the 3 of us in that position on that day to have to discuss what we're discussing right now on the day Mike got an extension. So, Darrin, it's this. There's an operations cap at play now, where the equipment staff, the video staff, the scouting staff, myself, and our director of football operations, Matt, we're all and all the coaches. So all of those group of people I just said have only a certain amount of salary that they can make. So it makes for it's a new world order, I think, in the way things are working. And we're like we said, we're a veteran football team. We're a veteran football staff too, that have carved out solid careers and built this thing up. And, we'll see how this works, how this year goes. But, certainly I'll be working through the last year of my contract, and I would like to be back in Winnipeg and see this thing through to the end and of my career. But that's out of my control. And, we'll sit down and try to make a decision what's best for me and my family, and we'll go from there.
I appreciate that answer, Kyle. One thing I know for sure is that people across the CFL look to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers when they're trying to identify how to instill a winning culture and a winning football operations group that you've done now, as you mentioned, for 10 years here in Winnipeg. Really appreciate your time, Kyle. Hope you have a great rest of your off season. Looking forward to having those draft conversations with you in the coming days. And all the best to you. Thank
you. All right. No problem.
Appreciate you, Kyle.